2 Samuel chapter 14, verse 25. Now in all Israel there was no one so much to be praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head there was no blemish in him. And when he cut the hair of his head, for at the end of every year he used to cut it, when it was heavy on him he cut it, he weighed the hair of his head 200 shekels by the king's weight. There were born to Absalom 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. She was a beautiful woman. So Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem without coming into the king's presence. Then Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king, but Joab would not come to him. And he sent a second time, but Joab would not come. Then he said to his servants, "See, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire." So Absalom's servant set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and went to Absalom at his house and said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" Absalom answered Joab, "Behold, I sent word to you, come here, that I may send you to the king, to ask, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me to be still there. Now therefore let me go into the presence of the king, and if there is guilt in me, let him put me to death." Then Joab went to the king and told him, and he summoned Absalom. So he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. Okay, we'll stop. So as a reminder, Absalom got basically a pardon from David in the previous week. Got brought back in from exile, right? He's now back. But the king had made orders that, he can come back, but I don't want to see him, right? So that was, I don't know if that was David's thinking of, now that's good punishment right there. Well, just won't let him see me, that'll show him. Or not. I don't think so. I think that, in my opinion, is that, and it's solely my opinion, is David couldn't face him because he couldn't face what he had not done, what David had not done. And maybe it reminded him of his past actions or something like that. So he just wasn't dealing with it. And I think oftentimes that's the way we deal with things too, is just, if we just put it aside, we don't look at it, and we won't have to address it type of thing. Okay. So anyways, at the beginning of this, now in all of Israel, they talk about how beautiful Absalom is. There's not a whole lot of scripture about Absalom in this, in the book. There's not a lot of narrative, about his accomplishments and the things that he's done for God's kingdom or anything, or for Israel or anything like that. Really, the notable thing is that he's pretty.
Yes.
And he's the king's son, right?
And he's vain.
And
right?
he is, yeah. I don't know if you caught that. Did you catch the haircut thing?
Yeah, exactly.
And that, notice that in 26 towards the end it says, he weighed the hair of his head. Not that everyone was so amazed, they weighed his hair to just, all see how much it was. Right. It was he weighed the hair. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's the kind of guy we're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly. It is all about him, and I think this is reflection of his upbringing.
Yep.
I think is what we're starting to see here. That goes on. So, he's pretty. And in verse 27, they describe he has 3 sons and a daughter, Tamar. That might sound familiar, but that was the name of his half-sister that I'm presuming that he named his daughter, in kind of like in honor of her, to maybe offer a blessing or something to her. So up from 25 to 27, man, it sounds like Absalom is a great guy. I mean, for the most part, from a general description here, he sounds like he's got it made. He's beautiful, right?
He'd make a good politician.
He'd make a great politician, right? And he's got beautiful children. You got to have the beautiful children, right? And a king's son, so he's related to the people in power, right? So yeah, it sure seems like that. So we get into 28, and so for 2 years he doesn't see the king. And then Absalom goes to Joab to get him to the king. Now, why do you think he picked Joab, of all people, to pick?
Wasn't Joab the one that was sent to get Absalom?
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, absolutely. There's that. He's the king's...
right-hand general.
Yeah, the general, right, of his army, the commander of his army. Yeah, that's what it was for.
Yeah, and I think Absalom probably knows the relationship between Joab and his dad, and that Joab can pretty much, that he has a lot of influence
He can
with David.
guide or manipulate. Because in the last thing, remember, it was Joab that sent the lady to the actress, right, to pretend that she had 2 sons and one was killed, that thing. So Joab, and as a reminder, Joab's, at least in my opinion, I surmised him as the ends justifies the means kind of guy. As long as he can get what he wants done. So I think there might be a kindred spirit there as well in this, because Absalom, he's not. Oftentimes people look for, before they do something, they'll ask the question, is it right to do this? I don't see that that's where Absalom is. I think it's, can I get what I want by doing this? Not, is it right to do this? And I think that's commentary on today's society. Is the question is, just can I get what I want out of this by this action? Not, is it right to do this action? Here, I think there's a great lesson here of modern day here. So he goes to Joab, and since Joab is not going to respond to Absalom, really kind of, no pun intended, really out of left field. Burned his field. I mean, it's like, of all the things to get his attention,
It worked.
it didn't. It absolutely did work. But I guess burning the field is one of those. One, you're messing with someone's income, right? Or at least his. I think one commentary said barley or something like that was. It was barley.
Yeah.
So that's going to affect his beer. I'm sure it will, or whatever barley is used for. I don't know if you eat barley. I always thought barley was just for making alcohol. I have no idea what else barley is used for. Feed, I guess. I think I've heard
Probably feed.
From animal feed stuff. So the question gets raised, by Joab, to the question, and you notice how he responds to the question, how Absalom responds to Joab's direct question. He doesn't directly answer it. He goes straight into, I want you to come and tell the king I want to see him. Again, it's more about, can I get results, not was it right to set someone's field on fire, type of thing here. Amazing. He asked this question about, why have I come from Geshur? It would have been better for me to be there still. Oh, when? I mean, this is it's all about him. This is all circling about him here. The interesting thing that I find here is, he says, now therefore, let me go into the presence of the king. This is just at the end of 32. And if there is guilt in me, let him put me to death. Did you catch the if there?
Right.
Absalom still doesn't think he's done anything wrong about killing his half-brother.
Yeah.
He just, some would say, well, he killed his half-brother because it was the proper punishment for Abner, I think it was Abner, that had raped his half-sister.
Amnon.
Abnon, thanks. But remember, it was 2 years after that event had happened that Absalom killed him. So we're talking, that's murder in cold blood now.
Right.
That's not just vengeance or something like that. It wasn't justice, is what I'm saying. At least I don't think so. So, it's like, you got to be kidding me, Absalom. You think you might find guilt in you? No, you were guilty But I think he knew that. I think that's, he was playing it up, if you will. So we get to the end. So Joab basically went to the king and told him and summoned Absalom. And he came to the king and bowed himself on his face and to the ground before the king. And this very last phrase, really, wow. And the king kissed Absalom. It's one thing to tolerate people's transgressions, their sins.
Mm.
It's another thing to embrace the sin. Because that's basically what the king is doing here, right? When he kisses Absalom, that's a symbolic gesture. That's for the court, their royal court, the people that are there to see. This isn't just a oh, hey son, kiss kiss, and like the French type of thing. This is actually implying, okay, I am definitely not going to do anything about your transgression and about your sin. And not only that, I'm going to almost endorse it now, is what it is. It's, you've heard the situations of family members or a child who maybe they live at mom and dad's house, but the child maybe has a girlfriend, and they're not married, but they're acting like they're married, and then mom and dad say, well, you know what, you don't have a house, why don't you come live here in our house? What are they doing? They're endorsing.
There's a fine line. It's hard.
Right.
It takes a lot of wisdom to see when to not be an enabler versus, when it's your own child, though, they're always your child. So
Right.
you want to help them.
Right.
But at the same time, we have to pray there's enough wisdom to
Right.
know when helping too much is
Right.
being an enabler.
Right, exactly. And honestly, I could not even advise anyone where and when you draw that line. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy.
It is not easy to struggle with when you become the enabler of someone versus you're a helper.
Looking back, it's easier to see it than when
Mhm.
you're
Oh,
in it.
absolutely. Yeah,
I think, the incredible thing about the Bible is that, when we see this story, we see it from the 1,000-foot level, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it lays it all out for us. It gives us the background about how things occur, and then, in this beginning of these verses that we read today, so it's giving you insight into Absalom's, into the type of person that he is, right? And how all of this is just kind of laying out for David. And, David's reaction here is going to basically set the course for Absalom and David for the remainder of their lives.
exactly. Exactly.
Because he is acquiescing to this sin that Absalom committed,
Right.
and is empowering Absalom
Right,
to think, I can get away with anything.
right.
I murdered my brother. Didn't even go to the king and say, hey, this is what happened. I took matters into my own hand, just like he did with Joab.
Right. That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
And
That's why we have to pray for great wisdom. We may make our response now might set the pattern
absolutely.
decade forward with
Yeah.
the situation with our own family.
Right.
Yeah, it goes back to the question as to, forgiveness that David gave his son is a good thing, but in this situation, is it the right thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a difference between being a good thing
Right.
and the right thing.
Absolutely.
And at this time, this forgiveness may not, evidently it wasn't the right thing,
Right.
because we see how it rolls out,
Right.
from
It
this
certainly
point
was
on.
forgiveness with no consequences.
No consequences.
Maybe forgiveness with consequences would have been.
Yeah. And I do think that's what God does for us when He forgives us. That doesn't mean we've absolved the
absolutely.
consequences, right?
Absolutely.
God definitely allows those consequences to, manifest itself.
Yeah.
You're not going to get out of those consequences, not from God's point of view. You're
Right.
not.
And this is the prime example of why God does it the way he does it, right?
Absolutely. Exactly. This is really the way it ought to be done. Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean that, see, David's endorsing, you should endorse it too. This is the way. No, I think that, without saying it.
Let's keep reading.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're going to find the rest of the story here. Yeah. And this is difficult for our society because society today says that, you've got to accept me for my actions. Otherwise, you're hateful and you're bigoted and whatever other mean word that we can come up with. But there's a world of difference between tolerating a person's actions and endorsing a person's actions.
Right, sure.
I mean, it's a huge difference there. People make lifestyle choices all the time. Do I agree with them? Do I think they should? No. But they expect me to endorse it.
Right.
Is the problem. It isn't so much, just tolerate me or accept me as I am. It's, no, I also want you to endorse me as I am.
Right.
And that's where, I'm sorry, I think we have to draw a line.
Right.
On that. And that's an age-old question about, people who are actively sinning and going to church. There's this phrase called church discipline. I have a hard time with that phrase. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with it. I just personally have a hard time with that because in our society today, you're supposed to just be inclusive. Let everybody in. And, I think there's a basis for, I'm sorry, there may be some things we're just going to have to exclude because of the choices you've made in your life or what you are.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but, discipline's hard. It ain't fun. That's why people don't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, short, sweet. How can we pray for you guys?